All right, just taking a quick look at this new FlashFish T300 Pro. So you might be wondering, what does the Pro name mean? Well, it means it has a bi-directional inverter. Yeah, so this is a small power station. It's a budget model, but they're giving you, that dedicated AC input, just a standard wall cord, no power brick, none of that. And we'll talk about all the specs here, in a second. As far as the actual numbers and figures, this is kind of a quick overview. This being a pro model, it's got all the stuff, really all the stuff you expect to see here in a small power station. You got to remember, this is a small budget power station. So the number one thing, LFP batteries, right? And 3,000 cycles, and that is to 80%. So they actually say these are grade A cells. And that's a good number. It's not the best number on the market, but it's a good number, right? I mean, this is going to last you a long, long time. And then for all the output ports, there's 9 of them, AC, DC, USB, and there's even an LED light too. And they mentioned 30 watts. 30 watt LED light would be insanely bright. Obviously that's an error there. There's 2 brightnesses. We'll talk about it. There's 2 brightnesses. None of them are 30 watts. But to talk about, kind of what you can power with this thing, 300 watt pure sine wave inverter, 600 watt surge. Now, there's no mention of that voltage dropping or voltage reduction feature. So, would you actually be able to power like a cheap coffee maker with 300 watts? If it doesn't have that feature, probably not, right? So you are going to be quite limited, with 300 watts. But, hey, you can always find, they do make little rice cookers. There are some cooking, heating up appliances that you can find less than 300 watts. There's just not many. So, just be aware of that. But really, you're probably going to use a small power station like this mostly for USB and some DC output, right? And this has really good specs. In fact, there's, 2 USB-A, 2 USB-C. The USB-C, not only do you get one that's 100 watts, but, this one here, guess what? In and out as well, bi-directional. So you can charge, you got really good charging options with this thing, right? I mean, the AC input, but then the USB-C input as well. And these DC inputs, this is actually quite interesting. You get the 12-volt car socket, but there's 2 barrel ports, and I don't think I've ever seen this on a power station before. There's actually 2 different sized barrel ports, a 5521 and a 5525. So, hey, depending on which cables you're used to using, you can see it right there. Whatever you got, you can plug it into this thing, no problem, right? No adapter needed. And now for the charging specs, yes, I mentioned the bidirectional inverter, the dedicated AC input. It's just a standard wall cord. There's no power brick. And of course, that means, 230 watts going into a 230 watt hour battery. That's a 1C rate, isn't it? So 1 hour. 1 hour. Now they mentioned 80%. It does it fast. It's going to slow it down. So to do a complete, 0 to 100% charge is going to be over 1 hour because it's not going to charge at 230 watts the entire time. But for 80% of it, it is, right? So, and this is just good for longevity for the battery. So that's good spec. Now, another thing too, usually when you get these bidirectional inverters, you get a UPS mode. And this is where it's a little iffy on this product because in some places they do call it a UPS mode. In other places they only call it EPS. And the spec they give varies as well, between 20 milliseconds and up to 30 milliseconds, which really is just too slow to be used with, a computer, any kind of sensitive electronic device, right? Now, the thing is with all these UPS, even the good ones, sometimes they just don't work. The switchover just doesn't work, right? So what you can always do, and especially since this product supports that 100 watt USB-C input, is if you are powering a computer, via the AC output, you can just charge through the USB, right? So use the USB, the 100 watt USB input to charge this thing while you're powering your computer. And most computers use around 100 watts or less, right? So, yeah, you wouldn't really even, drain the battery. Now, it's just the downside here is you would have power going into the battery and power going out of the battery at the same time, right? This is the whole reason these UPS modes were developed, because you don't want to be having power flowing through the battery at all times. But what I say is, think about it. You're using this UPS mode, or you want to use this for a UPS mode. Yeah, chances are you don't need to have this thing running 24/7, right? I mean, that's not good for any power station, no matter how good the UPS spec is, right? So yeah, by charging via DC, via the USB-C inputs, and doing this pass-through charging, there's no switchover, right? You have the inverter on, and you're powering, your load. There's no switchover, because if the power goes out, if the power cuts off to that USB-C input charge, it doesn't matter. Nothing changes. Nothing happens. Nothing changes with the AC inverter. The AC inverter was on and it was pulling power from the battery, and it just continues to do that. So in many ways, that's just a better setup. That's like having an online UPS. And as far as the solar spec here, it's pretty good. For 230 watt hours, it is pretty good. I mean, it's way better than something like a Jackery 300 Plus, which doesn't even have a dedicated solar input, So this actually has, the dedicated DC 7909, right? The 8 millimeter, and pretty good specs here. I mean, yes, it's only 30 volts, but 8 amps and 120 watts. And with these specs, you can use a 200 watt portable folding solar panel, as long as the open circuit voltage is less than 30 volts. There's tons of them on the market they're 200 watts, but they're still the standard voltage, right? Between like 18 and 24 volts or something like that. So what's really cool about this is you could use, 200 watt panel, and that would pretty much almost always guarantee that you would max out 120 watts going into this thing, right? Now, of course, you could use a 100 watt panel too, but you'll never get 120 watts, obviously. Now, some nice other little details that this unit has is this LED light. And this is a very interesting design, the way it's integrated into this product. As you can see, it's actually mounted to the handle. And this is actually almost a genius idea, because, since you can move the handle, obviously, to be able to pick it up, you can actually direct the light in 3 different ways, because this handle actually kind of pivots. It kind of locks into, 3 ways, basically facing forward, facing 45 degrees, and then when the handle's all the way up too. So this is cool, depending on how you want to use this light. And there's 2 different brightness modes as well. And as I was kind of, laughing with that mention about 30 watts, it's 1 watt on low and 3 watts on high. So, the typical brightness, but still 3 watts with LED is still going to be bright on high. And really nice too that, if you did have it in the upright position, say you're inside somewhere in a house or even a tent, it's just nice because, when you have light shining straight up, basically it'll hit the ceiling up here, and then it'll kind of radiate back down, right? And it kind of it'll light up your whole room, right? Or your tent. It kind of gives you this natural lighting effect. Another feature you might find useful on this thing is this power saving mode. Yeah, there's a switch right on the side of the unit. So again, this is a budget unit. There's no app, so it's nice to be able to have a setting like this that you can either turn on or off. And of course, this is, it's real similar to a lot of power stations called this eco mode. Whereas if you accidentally leave the inverter on, let's say after an hour and you're not really outputting anything with it, it'll just turn it off automatically, to save battery power. So, that can be good. The only time is if you're using something AC that draws very little power that you want to keep powered on, then you would switch it to off, right? Because you don't want it to turn that thing off on you. And, this is, all these features are kind of packed into this small, very portable, it's my favorite thing, right? Portable power stations, small things that you can take with you camping, on an adventure, and smaller power stations is just great too, because it kind of forces you to use DC power more, right? Which is always more efficient than AC, and kind of do the most with the least amount. and you can easily charge up small power stations with solar, right? Easily. 9.9 pounds. It's not the best in class, though, is it? I mean, let's be honest. For 230 watt hours, again, the reference that Jackery 300 Plus, which is also LFP, that thing's got about 50 watt hours more, and it's only 8 point. I think it's 8, right at 8 pounds, something like that. So this is, yeah, definitely not the lightest in the class, but there's a lot of things I like about this better than the Jackery. You know, as I talked about, the dedicated actual, you know, MPPT solar inputs and the LED lights and, you know, actual additional 12-volt outlets, the barrel ports. And guess what? This design actually I like a lot better than the Jackery as well, even though they kind of were inspired by Jackery, weren't they? They have these exposed screws. Really nice. Does kind of give it like a real, you know, high quality, rugged build to it, doesn't it? But it doesn't have that stupid bright orange colors that Jackery has. I still can't believe that, you know, that's all they offer. I can't imagine how many people don't buy Jackery because they don't like that bright orange. You know, especially if you're taking this with you. You got this sitting outside your tent. If you're camping with it all black, nobody even notices it, right? And also, even if you just have it sitting on your desk inside, like, it, you know, it kind of just blends in, right? Just kind of blends in. So very cool design. Very nice that it's all black. And again, with these screws, they have these, like, as you can see, this design where there's like these end caps. So it's not just exposed screws, like for the sake of, you know, for the sake of just doing it. It actually looks like these end pieces are like, you know, screwed down onto the side of this thing. Just a really cool, clean design. Now, you know, what's not so great about this is this screen. I mean, it's kind of pros and cons here. It's interesting. They haven't gone with a bright white, you know, for the font there, for the graphics. It's kind of like this soft, very soft, isn't it? Like old school white. So yeah, it could be pros and cons. I think the con obviously is you're not going to have a chance in hell in seeing this thing outside, especially on a sunny day. But it is nice, again, if you are using this inside, like at night on your desk, you know, next to your computer, your workstation. Yeah, you can have that screen on, that display on, and it's not going to be annoying. It's not going to be, you know, an eyesore. It's going to be actually probably quite nice to look at, right? So, and again, this being a budget unit, it's not going to have, you know, some kind of app setting where you can adjust the screen brightness. So pros and cons, I think I'd rather have it like this, a nice, dim, soft display versus something like my EcoFlow Delta 2. Any of you guys have, you know, a Delta 2 or any of the EcoFlow models that kind of use that same screen. The brightness is insane on that, right? It's just, I always end up turning the screen off. But I kind of like to be able to, you know, always see what, you know, what the screen has to display. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world. Again, I'd rather have it like this. And it is something just, again, unusual and a little bit different. There's a lot to appreciate here, isn't there?